So literally, if you care about your children, if you care about your grandchildren, then you have to do all that you possibly can do today, to make sure that your generation is just, to make sure that you do not bequeath to your offspring and to their offspring a debt of wrongdoing, a debt of imbalance, a debt of injustice that they will have to pay. Otherwise, I'm telling you, you are betraying your own unborn descendants.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to my YouTube channel once again. My name is Dash Lifestyle. Kindly for watching me for the first time, remember to subscribe, like, share, and also comment. So guys, if you are a black American and a white American, you can't miss to watch this video till the end. We have Shahid Bulsen. He has come out and exposed how America it has turned into and how so many people, they were viewing America to be the first world country, to be the superpower country. And majority of people, they thought that America being the superpower country, it is not going to fall down. It will remain the superpower country. But we have seen some of the changes now, which it is happening in America, whereby Shahid Bulsen is coming out and tell us exactly how America it is going to fall down, how the other countries like China, they are coming to take over. So kindly guys, watch this video till the end, then I'll be back with more comment.
We should talk about justice, different concepts of justice, moral justice, legal justice, and what you can call epochal justice, or what we understand as divine justice in this dunya. Now, moral justice, or what I'm calling moral justice, is basically a sentiment. It's a feeling that we have, the feeling, that you have when you suffer or when you witness what you perceive to be injustice, unfairness, harm or hurt or some kind of wrong. This originates in our fitrah. It's in our nature. It might be even subconsciously informed by an innate recognition of divine justice. Meaning we're born with a sense of good and a sense of what is upright and natural behavior and a sense of our rights and responsibilities as human beings. So when something violates that, or when something happens that violates that, we have a visceral, emotional reaction. And I think that most of us tend to operate on this level. The emotional reaction to issues of justice and injustice is what prompts people to activism, prompts people to resistance and opposition, or to become involved, even to give charity and so on, or even to become militants or what have you. It's the sense of moral justice. But of course, this innate sense of justice also gets filtered through all of the add-ons of our personalities, our ego, our nafs, our self. It gets polluted and diluted by our own psyches, by our own interests, and our own learned or accrued biases and prejudices and so on. So this makes it incredibly subjective. It's variable and it's unstable. And it's always debatable. It can tend to lack balance or proportion, and it can be easily manipulated. So it's unreliable. The sense of moral justice is unreliable. And because it's unreliable, or anyway, this is one of the reasons, this is why we have laws. Legal justice. Legal justice represents the formalized system of laws, rules, that societies establish in order to govern behavior and to resolve disputes and so on. It aims to remove the subjectivity and personal emotion of moral justice from the administration of justice by enforcing clear rules with proportionate consequences. Generally laws are derived from a sort of consensus over time about what's right and what's wrong, what's fair and what's unfair and so forth, and about how best to keep order in the society and stability. It isn't ambiguous. It's predictable and it's fixed. Now, it's obviously imperfect, and it can be meddled with, it can be manipulated. But this is less the case than with so-called moral justice. It can conflict with any individual's sentiments about right and wrong, and not everyone is going to be satisfied with the outcome of legal justice. But it's much easier to prove that a law has been broken than it is to prove that an action is unambiguously and unanimously regarded as unjust, objectively. So when we're talking about Israel, for example, when you're talking about Israel-Palestine, for example, you'll notice that they always try to keep the conversation, or they always try to veer the conversation towards subjective senses of moral justice, like, do you condemn Hamas and so forth? This is irrelevant. And in fact, both sides do it. We focus on the evil of Israel's actions rather than on the illegality. And that's exactly the way that the Zionists want the conversation to be, because it is subjective. As long as it's a subjective dispute, it goes nowhere. It's just everyone has their own opinion and so on. But if you're talking about the law, it's incredibly clear. You know, if the legal frameworks that the world claims to uphold, international law, were to be enforced on Israel the way that it's enforced against other nations, well, there would be no ambiguity whatsoever about this situation. This isn't speculation. This is not opinion. This is simply what the law states. This is what the law dictates. So, for example, there would never even be any question about an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. In fact, an unconditional ceasefire would have been imposed on Israel. Under the Fourth Geneva Convention, collective punishment, indiscriminate bombing, and targeting of civilians, these are war crimes. Meanwhile, this is exactly how Israel has conducted its military campaign in Gaza. That's literally their approach. Entire families wiped out, hospitals bombed, food supplies blocked, and so on. Okay, these are not just tragedies. These are crimes under the law, and it's not ambiguous, and it's not open to debate. It's literally what they have been doing. And of course, by law, the occupation itself is illegal. Israel must withdraw under the law. Again, that's not an opinion. United Nations Security Council Resolution 242 demanded that Israel withdraw from the territories that it occupied in 1967. That was nearly 60 years ago. The occupation is illegal under Article 49 of the Fourth Geneva Convention, which explicitly prohibits any occupying power from transferring its own population into the occupied land. By every settlement in the West Bank and East Jerusalem is a war crime. This is not an opinion. If international law were applied, then all of Israel's settlers would be forcibly removed. The Israeli military presence in the West Bank would have to end immediately, and Palestine would have full control over its land, because that's the law. For over 17 years, the Gaza Strip has been under siege. Israel controls its borders, its airspace, its coastline. Again, the Fourth Geneva Convention makes it very crystal clear. Blockading a civilian population, depriving them of food, depriving them of water, depriving them of medicine, depriving them of energy, these are war crimes. The UN has described Gaza as an open-air prison, as we all know. The International Criminal Court has already stated that the blockade of Gaza is a crime against humanity. According to international law, Israel should be compelled to lift the siege against Gaza immediately, not an opinion. We don't need more investigations. We don't need more reports. The evidence of war crimes is overwhelming. Hospitals bombed, entire neighborhoods reduced to rubble, journalists, doctors, children killed in indiscriminate airstrikes. Under the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court, these are not just military actions. Again, they are crimes. Israeli leaders, Netanyahu, Gallant, and others, every general who has ordered attacks on civilians should be indicted and prosecuted at the International Criminal Court. Under universal jurisdiction, any country could arrest Israeli officials and hold them accountable. The forced displacement of Palestinians is not just a moral outrage, it's a violation of international law. UN Resolution 194 guarantees the right of return for refugees to their homes. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights enshrines the rights of all people to return to their homeland. Yet Palestinians are denied this right, while Israel brings in settlers from all across the world. That's against the law, period, not an opinion. Palestinian refugees should be allowed to return home, and Israel should be required to compensate those who have suffered generations upon generations of displacement, because that's the law. I mean, what happened when Russia annexed Crimea? Immediate sanctions. What happened when Iraq invaded Kuwait? Well, there was a full-scale international military response. What happened when South Africa was under apartheid? A global movement of boycotts, a global movement of divestment and sanctions. Yet when Israel violates every principle of international law, instead of being punished, it's rewarded with billions of dollars, billions in military aid, billions in trade agreements, and diplomatic protection. Well, this is the double standard. If international law were to be applied fairly, Israel would face a total arms embargo. All economic and military ties would be severed until it complied with the law. So again, you can have whatever opinion you want to have about this, but it is the law. If your opinion does not align with the law, well, this is where you prove whether or not you want to belong to the law-abiding nations of the civilized world, or you want to be an outlaw. You want to be a renegade. You want to be a criminal. This is where that becomes clear, because look, you can agree or not agree, but when it comes to the law, you're supposed to adhere to it either way. Israel's violations of international law are not just about crimes of war, they're about preventing the very existence of Palestine. But the law, again, is clear. Palestine has a right to statehood under UN Security Council Resolution 242 and 338. Palestine is entitled to sovereignty. Under the ICJ's ruling in 2004, Israel's wall in the West Bank is illegal and Palestinian land must be returned. These are not opinions. This is legal justice. Under the law, Palestine should be immediately recognized as a fully independent state with East Jerusalem as its capital. There should be no negotiations on this. In fact, just enforcement of the law. Understand, none of this is radical. None of this is controversial. It's simply what international law demands. It's what international law states. And we should always focus on this when we talk about Palestine, when we talk about Israel. In my opinion, we should focus on legal justice instead of on moral justice. Again, under international law, Israeli leaders should be prosecuted for war crimes. Israel should withdraw from all occupied Palestine. The Gaza blockade should end immediately. Palestinian refugees should be returned to their homes. Israel should face global sanctions and economic pressure until they comply, and a Palestinian state should be fully established. All of this is well established. All of this is understood, and all of this is accepted by everyone in the world except by the ones who are breaking the law. The ones who are breaking the law don't want to talk about the law. Instead, they want to talk about subjective, emotional, and ambiguous, debatable interpretations of right and wrong, and justifications for what they do, and so forth. They want to keep the discussion in the realm of opinion, when in fact opinion is irrelevant in any matter where the law is clear. Opinion is irrelevant in any matter where the law is clear. That's the thing. Where there's a law, when legal justice exists on something, then there is no point in arguing about anyone's subjective sense of moral justice, because we've all agreed to abide by the law. You understand? We have all agreed to adhere to the law. And as Muslims, we have a religious obligation to abide by the agreements, by the treaties and the contracts and so forth that we have signed. Now, the people who wrote these laws, who wrote these treaties, are continuously themselves breaking the treaties, breaking the agreements. But we genuinely believe in the rule of law. As Muslims, we genuinely believe that agreements are binding. And like I said, violating or breaching an agreement is much easier to prove than trying to convince someone about the morality or the immorality of an action. So you see the difference between moral justice, or a subjective sense of justice, a sentiment, a feeling, an emotion about what's right, an emotion about what's wrong, as opposed to legal justice. Legal justice is more cut and dry. I remember when I was a little kid in school, we had a classroom court system where we had students assigned as police who would give any kid in class a ticket if they broke a classroom rule. And then every Friday, we would have court. You had a student who was assigned the role of the judge, and you had a student who was assigned the role of a defense advocate, and so on. And the issue of their rule breaking would be addressed in a sort of mock trial every Friday. I was the classroom prosecutor. So when someone threw trash on the floor, or so-and-so was chewing gum, or what have you, whatever the case may be, I would be the one to prosecute that. So the defense advocate or the kid himself would come up with all sorts of reasons why they did what they did, why they broke the rule, which to my thinking was just an admission of guilt. Case closed. Khalas. You broke the rule. Your reasons are irrelevant. How you feel about it is irrelevant. The rule is the rule, and you did not follow the rule. Case closed. And I never lost, because it's clear cut. See, once you have agreed to the rules, you are bound by the rules. So yes, you should scrutinize the rules very carefully before you agree to them. Now, America and obviously Israel, they never had to scrutinize any of the rules because they never expected to be bound by the rules. They only expected the rules to only ever be applied and to only ever be enforced on everyone else. But no, the rules are the rules, and when you break the rules, it's clear, and there's nothing dubious about it. Now, in a dispute, the judge can decide whether to grant clemency or leniency or what have you, but clemency or pardon or leniency or any of these types of measures cannot be granted to anyone before trial. There may be mitigating circumstances and so on, but that has nothing to do with the establishment of the fact of lawbreaking. Do you see what I mean? And this should not be a foreign concept for Jews. Religious Jews are very much about the law. They understand the concept of the rule of law very well. And obviously so do we. So do Muslims. There's no people on the face of the earth who understand the rule of law more than Muslims, in fact. Legality and jurisprudence are major defining aspects of our religion. And this brings us to the issue of divine law, or epochal justice. What I mean by that is the embedded system of balance that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has built into creation. That's what justice is really about. It's about balance. It's about restoring balance when the actions of people or the actions of nations have caused an imbalance. And this balancing is inescapable. Even if it comes over the course of generations, balance will be restored. You have this idea about how the sins of the father will not be visited upon the son. But I think that you misapply this idea. Because what we're talking about, again, is balance. Or you can think of it in terms of debt. When you do wrong, when you take someone's right, well, you incur a debt. You are in debt to that person or to those people whom you have wronged. And that debt must be paid. And it will be paid willingly or unwillingly. And yes, if you die in that debt, the debt isn't canceled. Your debt will be collected from your descendants. And that applies on the level of nations just as it applies on the level of individuals. This is something, again, that we as Muslims understand very well. No one gets away with anything, period. No one gets away with anything. There's a fascinating hadith in which all three concepts of justice overlap: the moral justice, the legal justice, and divine justice. Rasulullah ﷺ said, sometimes you people come to me with your disputes, and one of you may be more eloquent or more persuasive than the other. And so I may judge in his favor because of this, because of his eloquence, because his argumentation is so persuasive. And by judging in his favor, I may give him a right that's not his right. So basically, beware of accepting a judgment which gives you what you have no right to have. Because if I judge in your favor and you're in the wrong, then I'm only judging on your behalf and giving you a piece of the fire. In other words, don't let your subjective sense of moral justice cause you to demand what isn't your right to demand through legal justice. Because in so doing, you may put yourself on the wrong side of divine justice. And every form of justice is flawed except for this. So take that seriously. Take that very seriously. This should be a restraining factor on your volatile sense of moral justice. And it should be a consideration when you're dealing with legal justice. So the most important thing is always going to be to try to be on the right side of divine justice. Because if you're not only putting yourself in debt, but you are potentially betraying your own descendants for generations to come. Because they will experience the rebalancing of what you and your people put out of balance. Please understand me. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala warns us against a fitna, an affliction, a tribulation, a strife, or what have you, that will not only afflict those among us who do wrong, but will afflict everyone writ large. And that happens when the people do not immediately and urgently try to prevent each other from committing actions that put the balance of justice out of kilter. You have allowed the balance to become so imbalanced, so lopsided, so skewed. You have allowed even just a few of your people to do that. such that now everyone has to go through the rebalancing, even though they themselves did not commit the actions that caused the imbalance. You understand? So literally, if you care about your children, if you care about your grandchildren, then you have to do all that you possibly can do today, to make sure that your generation is just, to make sure that you do not bequeath to your offspring and to their offspring a debt of wrongdoing, a debt of imbalance, a debt of injustice that they will have to pay. Otherwise, I'm telling you, you are betraying your own unborn descendants. And again, I know that this is something that the Jews must understand. After all their centuries of experience, they have seen with their own eyes and they have felt with their own lives the reality of epochal justice. They have strayed and been disciplined. They have disobeyed and been punished. They have done wrong and they have been chastised over and over again. And their whole book is a chronicle of this phenomenon. Why their whole history is nothing but a testament to this reality. So they know this. They know this very well. They know this just as surely as we do, that no one gets away with anything. Even their enemies who transgressed against them, whether it's Fir'aun or whether it's the Nazis. I mean, look at how pathetic the state of Germany is today. The whole of Europe used to tremble at the terrible power of the Third Reich. Now Germany is a laughingstock today, and it's killing itself by 1,000 cuts in front of the whole world. Wallahi, divine justice is real, and it's inescapable, whether you're on the right side of it or the wrong side of it. Allah will balance out the scales of justice, even across generations. The Jews know this, and they know that what they're doing in Palestine right now is doing nothing but earn their own progeny hardship and misery. You can't possibly be that blind to history and that ignorant about your own book and the chronicles of your own people. I mean, you know perfectly well that you are actually condemning yourselves and condemning your own descendants by the injustice that you're committing in Gaza, the injustice that you're committing in the West Bank, in Lebanon, in Syria, and so on. The Jews know this perfectly well, wallahi. You are sentencing your children and your children's children to a debt that they will have to pay because of your actions. You know this because it is a pattern that plays out again and again across your history. I mean, it plays out again and again across all of human history, but you wrote it all down. And you supposedly study it. You supposedly study the history of your particular people, so you have no excuse. When you have done wrong in the past, you have faced the consequences. And when you have been wrong, well, consequences have struck those who have wronged you. That's what your whole book is about. And you know very well that what you're doing today in Gaza is wrong. And you know that you've been wrong for a whole century in Palestine. And the consequences are going to be inescapable, just as they always are. For you, just as they are inescapable for everyone else. And no, I'm not forgetting about America. The same applies to you. The same applies to America. You're not getting away with anything either. I mean, do you really believe that you got away with the genocide of the Native Americans? Do you really think that you got away with chattel slavery? Do you really think that you got away with the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki? You think you got away with that? Do you really think that you're getting away right now with the genocide in Gaza that you're enabling? Every single thing that you have done, every grotesque injustice that you have committed as a nation is going to fall upon your heads. In fact, it's already happening. Oh, it's an evil nation that tells its people that there's never going to be a reckoning. It's an evil nation that tells their own people that they're above the law, that tells them that they're unaccountable, that tells them that they will never face the consequences of their actions. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in Surah Al-Anbiya about the fate of all of those nations who wielded injustice as their weapon and who thought themselves to be immune to accountability. All those nations before who persisted in their crimes until the punishment was upon them. And when the punishment came, they fled, or they tried to flee. And Allah told them, don't flee. Return to your homes, return to your luxuries where you used to live so that you can be questioned. But then when it was too late, when their doom was already sealed, then they cried out, woe to us. Indeed, we were the wrongdoers. You know, I had a post on TikTok the other day, an excerpt from a recent video where I proposed the idea that the American citizens should be allowed to sell their citizenship to foreigners for money. So then they could take that money and escape from the United States and go somewhere else and get out of that country. You know, within minutes, that post had tens of thousands of views, tens of thousands of likes, shares, and comments. And almost all of the comments were from Americans saying that they would sell their citizenship in a heartbeat. And they'd be on the next flight out if they could get out of America. They wouldn't look back. They'd say they'd leave with just the clothes that they had on their back. Because this is fleeing from the punishment that they know is descending on that country. You were warned when you slaughtered the Native Americans of that land and built your empire on their bones. You were warned when you enslaved millions of Africans, stripped them of their humanity, and treated them like commodities. You've been warned when you waged wars of conquest, when you funded dictatorships, when you propped up apartheid regimes, when you crushed entire economies to maintain your dominance. You were warned when you supported the occupation of Palestine, when you armed the murderers of children, when you justified genocide and you justified ethnic cleansing as self-defense. For generations, you've played God upon the earth, believing yourselves to be above consequences, believing yourselves to be above judgment, above retribution. You thought that justice was something that you could impose upon others, but never something that could be imposed upon you. And listen, understand, your problems, your wrongs are not mistakes. No one forced you to commit those crimes. No one put a gun to your head and forced you to treat other human beings like livestock. The racial problem in America wasn't an accident. It wasn't a misstep. Do you understand? It was a deliberate, created injustice. You created this problem, and you worked hard to create this problem. You didn't just hate African people. You concocted a whole quasi-scientific rationale to justify it. You willfully interpreted your religious text to try to justify it. You built a complex propaganda, indoctrination, brainwashing, miseducation system to try to implant it into the minds of your people, to reinforce the evil. Do you understand? You did this with commitment. You worked diligently, relentlessly, and invested massive energy, time, money, intellect, and effort to enforce, to maintain, and to preserve the injustice you created. And you created an economic system, a machine for managing your economy through war, through torture, through maiming, crippling, killing, and carnage. No one made you do that. You chose to do that. And you maintain and defend that system until today. You can't just say, oops, and let's move on. You have never addressed what it is about you that made you choose to do these things, that made you create these injustices, that made you systematize these injustices and protect them for decades upon decades. It's like a degenerate gambler, addicted to gambling. And he thinks that if he can find some kind of way to pay off his debts, if he can find some way to get his house from being foreclosed, it means he solved his problem. No. His problem is his addiction to gambling. So America, you have never addressed what is internally wrong with your culture, with your so-called civilization that has made you do these things, that has made you do the things that you have done. Not to mention, like I said, you have never actually ever even stopped doing those things. But you think that if you can just keep kicking the can of consequences down the road, then you never have to change. This is what you think. You think that you're succeeding. You think that your way is working. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that He did not create the heavens and the earth and everything that is in between them, in play, in jest, in amusement. The world is not a playground for your power. The world is a stage for divine justice. The laws of history are not written by your institutions. They are decreed by the one who governs the cosmos. And when the balance is broken, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala restores it through whatever means necessary. And now, America, you're beginning to see the consequences in America. The cracks in your empire are showing. Your economy is crumbling under the weight of its own corruption. Your political system is paralyzed. It's been hijacked by oligarchs. Your streets are filled with rage and division and despair. You're witnessing the slow dismantling of the very power that you wielded against others. Now you cry out, woe to us, indeed we were wrongdoers. But it's too late. You failed to make amends. You failed to atone. You failed to repent. Instead, you doubled down on your tyranny. You waged new wars. You funded new massacres. You armed new oppressors. You stood by and cheered as Gaza was burned to the ground, as hospitals were bombed, as mothers cradled their dead children in their arms. And you called all of this security. You called all of this defense. But what it is in reality is the final chapter of your arrogance before the punishment. And now the rebalancing has begun. Allah said we hurl the truth against falsehood and it crushes it, so it vanishes. So woe to you for what you describe. The balance of the world is shifting. The oppressed are rising. The global order that you enforce through lies, through carnage, and through exploitation, it's disintegrating. Your arrogance has sealed your fate. And now the truth that you suppressed is crashing down upon you. For the believers, for the Muslims, this is a reminder. The justice of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is inevitable. The powerful nations that commit oppression are not invincible. They're not immune. They're just waiting for their reckoning. And for those people who still stand with injustice, return to your homes, return to your luxuries, return to your comforts if you can. But your predecessors, all this time, actually built nothing for your nation except an all-encompassing catastrophe. In fact, you've done nothing for 400 years but cultivate your own end. You know, they said that when God had decreed a punishment upon a people, those people would see the dark clouds moving across the horizon towards them. And I'm telling you, those clouds are thick and heavy on the American horizon today. Everything will be answered for. Everything. Now, I know full well that there's a large segment of my audience, Westerners, who will object to the whole concept of divine justice. And the irony is that this is your whole problem. This is your whole problem. You have some understanding of moral justice, you have some understanding of legal justice, but you reject the reality of divine justice. And this is exactly why you can never even get those other concepts of justice right. No, I'm never going to make your mistake. I'm never going to make your mistake of analyzing geopolitics in exclusion of what God informs us about reality. Kissinger is not my prophet. George Friedman is not my prophet. You know, Mearsheimer, Jeffrey Sachs, whoever, these are not my prophets. No, you can't exclude the Creator from your analysis of creation if you have any interest in making an accurate assessment or an accurate forecast. When you don't understand the reality of divine justice, well, you will never properly understand moral justice, and you'll never properly understand or apply legal justice, just like the hadith says. You have to interact with legal justice and you have to interact with moral justice with the knowledge that above everything else is the justice of Allah. And it is perfect and it is inescapable. Your ancestors, your predecessors, your forefathers have put you in this position in the West, in America. They bequeathed to you a culture of permissiveness, a culture of complacency, complacency in the face of injustice. So now your leaders, your oligarchs, your politicians, your elites can continue to imbalance the scales of justice, and you do nothing. They built a culture for you of dishonesty, a culture of materialistic nihilism, a culture of passivity, a culture of moral relativism, a culture of mockery towards even the concept of legal justice, a culture that scoffs at God, a culture of arrogance and violence, a culture that imagines itself to be more enlightened and smarter and more clever than those who came before them and who rose and fell. And you think that you have outwitted the inevitable. But you have never understood anything about reality, in fact. I'm telling you that every nation is on a leash. It's on a leash. They don't rise and fall. They just pull their leash to the limit and Allah pulls them back. You know, He gives you slack and He gives you slack and He gives you slack to see what you will do. If you do wrong, He gives you a chance to repent. He gives you a chance to make amends. But America, you never did that. And now that leash is being retracted, just like it was retracted for Rome. And look at Italy today. Just like it was retracted for the British Empire, and look at England today. And just like it was retracted for the French, and now look at them today. Look at France right now. Look at the Belgians. Look at the Portuguese. Look at the Spanish. Look at all of them today. What's their state? You know, Rome ruled vast territories across Europe, across North Africa, across the Middle East for centuries. Its legions were unrivaled. You know, its administration was sophisticated. Its cultural influence reshaped civilization itself. It was, for its time, the superpower. But today, what remains of that once great empire? Italy is a nation of political instability, economic fragility, and deep societal fractures. It struggles with debt. It struggles with high unemployment and irrelevance on the global stage. Italy is irrelevant on the global stage. A country that once dictated the fate of continents is now unable to dictate its own domestic affairs without external influence. Subhanallah. And Britain once controlled a quarter of the world's land and people. They colonized, they looted, they enslaved entire nations. London was the center of global decision-making. The British Navy was unmatched, and their empire spanned all the way from Africa to Asia, from the Caribbean to the Pacific. And where are they now? What's their state now? It's a broken nation, clinging to the illusions of power, the nostalgia. Their economy is in decline. Their political leadership is a global laughingstock. Their military is a shadow of its former self. While Britain today is subservient to America, to American interests, dependent on alliances to exist, incapable of independent action. Even its own kingdom, so-called, is fracturing. Scotland and Northern Ireland are seeking separation. Everybody wants to get away from them, you know? And same with France. They boasted a great colonial empire, ruling over vast territories in Africa, Indochina, and the Caribbean. They also looted resources, imposed their language and their culture, and they brutally suppressed resistance. They were feared. But today, look at France. It's plagued by economic stagnation, racial tensions, domestic unrest. Their so-called great nation is in crisis. Its streets are filled with protests every day. Its politicians are exposed for corruption. People laugh at them. All of their former colonies have slipped from their grasp. You know, they cling to a delusion of relevance by trying to interfere in African affairs until now, but they are consistently being humiliated and rejected by the very nations that they once ruled. And think about Spain. The Spanish Empire conquered and plundered most of the Americas, using brutal force and subjugation against the indigenous populations. The Spanish galleons that are so famous in history, carrying their gold and silver from the colonies back to Spain, making it one of the wealthiest nations of all time. And today, Spain is an afterthought, economically weak, politically fractured, and constantly teetering on instability. Even within Spain, just like with Scotland and Northern Ireland, you've got the Basques and the Catalonians wanting independence from Spain. Spain was once the ruler of all the Americas, and now they're struggling to maintain unity within their own borders. And Belgium, think about Belgium. It's a tiny European nation that was once one of the most brutal colonial powers in history. King Leopold turned the Congo into his personal slaughterhouse, killing millions upon millions in the pursuit of rubber and ivory. But look at today. Again, Belgium is economically weak, politically divided, and militarily non-existent. It has no global influence whatsoever. Its greatest claim of importance is that it hosts the headquarters of the European Union, which is an institution where Belgium itself is barely relevant. The world only remembers Belgium for its atrocities, not for any lasting power or any lasting leadership. And I mentioned Portugal. That was one of the first European colonial powers, ruling over Brazil and Angola and Mozambique and parts of India and parts of Asia. They were in Indonesia. They were the pioneers of the transatlantic slave trade, carrying millions of people into bondage. Now, Portugal is a minor nation on the periphery of Europe, economically dependent on tourism, suffering from youth emigration. Everyone is leaving. They barely maintain any relevance in even European affairs, much less global affairs. Their past glory is nothing today. There's nothing left of it. Every one of those nations once thought themselves to be untouchable. They thought that their power was eternal. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not allow tyranny to last forever. And whoever forgets this fact is doomed to just become a proof of this fact. And this has to factor into your analysis. This has to factor into your commentary. It has to factor into your understanding of what's happening in geopolitics today. It has to factor into your understanding of current affairs. It has to factor into your understanding of economics and politics and so on. If you don't understand the reality of divine justice, if you don't understand the patterns of how divine justice is manifested throughout history, you won't be able to read events properly. You won't be able to even understand what is inevitable to come. The same way that the Zionists want to keep discussion and keep all conversation about Palestine within the realm of so-called moral justice, where everything is subjective and everyone has a right to their opinion. They don't want to talk about legal justice, because that is a very clear issue, the violation of the law, where the laws have been broken and are continuously being broken by Israel. They never want to talk about that. And it's the same way with the Westerners, that you never want to talk about divine justice. You want to keep all discussion within moral justice and legal justice. You don't want to bring in divine justice. I know that there's a lot of people who don't want me to talk about these things, who don't want me to bring religion, so-called bring religion, into my analysis. But that's a manipulative way of even phrasing it. Because no, I'm not bringing religion into it. You're the one who insists on keeping religion out of it. That would be like, for you, your ideology is maybe, say, Marxism or it's capitalism. You never take capitalism out of the conversation, do you? Capitalism has to be involved in every conversation about every topic, whether it's politics or economics or history. You bring capitalism into every subject. But no one can tell you, well, why do you bring capitalism into this? Why do you have to analyze world events, or why do you have to analyze current affairs through the Marxist lens or through the capitalist lens? Right? No, it's understood. You have a viewpoint. You have sources of your own, sources that have informed your own analysis, have formed your own understanding of the world and your own paradigms, the paradigms that you operate under through your analysis. Well, Islam is the informer of mine. My analysis is informed by Islam. My analysis is informed by the Quran and the Sunnah. And I'm probably right more often than you are. No Western philosophy, no Western intellectual trend is as reliable as a source for understanding the world as the Quran and the Sunnah. So yes, that's the basis for my understanding. And you can like it or not like it, but you should just get used to it. Because the West's ability to force atheist thinking upon all intellectual endeavors is coming to an end. And the Muslim population, the Muslim Ummah is rising, and our intellectual approach will always integrate Islam into how we understand the world. And that's why our understanding of the world is always going to be superior.
So guys, I hope you have watched that video from Shahid Bulsin. I really love to bring Shahid Bulsin to this channel because he is always talk about what is happening in United States and the Western countries, how the Western countries how the Western country is going to fall down, and how the Western countries they are treating some of the black people in the continent. And also Shahid Bulsin, he has been talking and defending about the Muslim, how America it is involving with the situation which it is going on in the Muslim country like the Gaza, how America it is destabilizing, and how America it is participating to bring so many countries down so that they can remain to be a superpower country. I've been telling you exactly what it is happening right now in America. There's a lot of things that it is happening in America whereby the national media of America, they can't come out and show you exactly what it is happening. So right now, we have seen America, it is going to fall down. Yeah, America, it is going to fall down. And soon, China will take over as the superpower country, because we are seeing the recent government, Donald Trump government, it has managed to scrapped a lot of things which it was going on according to the will of the people in America. But right now, majority of American people, they are also regretting to why they voted in for Donald Trump, because these people, they didn't know the agenda that Donald Trump he has, because these are some of the hiding agendas that Donald Trump he was hiding from the American people. You know, majority of American people, they vote in for Donald Trump knowing that Donald Trump is going to make America great again. But America right now, it has changed. Life, it has become more difficult. Even the basic necessities, majority of American people, they cannot afford. Majority of Americans, they are losing their jobs. And also, right now, we are seeing majority of America, they are leaving their country. They want to go and live in other country, because right now, America, it has changed. Right now, America, it is not that country that so many people, they knew about. It is a dream country. It is a country whereby so many people, they were going to America to look for green pasture. Right now, America, it is for the rich people. If you are rich, America, it will make you rich. But if you are poor, America, it is not for you. And that's why Shahid Bulsin is coming out and telling us exactly how America, it is going to fall down, and also how America, it is interfering with some other country. We have seen America giving warning to some of the black countries in the Caribbean. We have seen America cutting the US aid, the funds to some of the African country. America, it has been cutting this fund which it was going to the African country, knowing that they have finished and they have finished this African country, because American government, they knew that this African country, they depend so much to America, to whereby if they will cut this some of the support which it was America giving to some of the black countries, majority of the black countries, they are going to suffer. But for me, I can tell you that what America, it has done, it is a good thing by cutting off this support that these people, they were giving to America. To the Africa, it has made African leaders to wake up, because this is a wake-up call to our African leaders to not to depend so much to this Western country. Right now, also, Donald Trump, he came to office and he said that he's going to make America great. He wants to see his people living well, not his people suffering. So he was going out and cutting all the fund all the fund and support that America, it was giving to some of the black countries. And for me, I can tell our leaders, our black leaders, that we need also to work according to the will of the people. The same way Donald Trump, he's trying to safeguard his country, the same way also our African and our black countries are leaders to safeguard our country. Put the will of your people first. Make sure that your people, they are living well before going out and helping other people. This is a wake-up call to us, to our black leaders. And that it is some of the things that Shahid Bulsin has coming out and talk about. And also, he has been defending the Muslim. He wants to see the Muslim becoming together, because there's so much things that happening to the Muslim country. We have seen how Americans, they are treating the Muslim. We have seen how the Asian, not only the Muslim, how the Asian, they are being treated, how people, they are being deported in United States. So there's a lot of things that Shahid Bulsin, he has talked about, and I don't want to repeat it. So kindly guys, subscribe if you haven't, like this video, share, and also comment. See you in my next one. Bye bye guys.